So this is quite an honor for me. You know what I mean? I get to just sit and have a conversation with a man that I've looked up to for a very long time. And initially, just around the game of basketball, right? It's one of those things that I asked my dad, Dad, you think I could make it to the NBA, right? My father was he said, well, nothing beats a failure but a try, right? And what that means was, boy, I know you ain't going to the league, but I'm gonna be nice because you're my son, right? But this is a man who, I mean, you saw it. The jump shot was unbelievable. The moves and everything were unbelievable. And so, sir, it's such an honor just to sit here and have a conversation with you. Um, yeah, so earlier we started, and honestly, we've been talking for the last half hour, just about different things, and we're not going to take it down. We're going to keep it going. And so, if you have a question while we're talking about something that has been said, please, as Chris said, just raise your hand, and we're gonna keep the conversation going. So, I want to start off with a question, and that is, what was a day in the life for young? Back then, it was Chris Jackson. What was the day in the life for you in Mississippi?
Uh, you talk about in terms of training or just in?
Just every day. So you wake up, you know, it could have been before basketball, whatever. How was your life when you were younger?
Um, I mean, we grew up poor, so there was a good many mornings we grew up hungry.
Mm,
But but also I grew up with, I didn't have a name for it at the time. I grew up with Tourette syndrome,
mm,
you know, neurological disorder. So everything you did for the most part, and I would use this example a lot. Like if I hit this piece of wood with my knuckles, and that actually hurt me just then. But I had a thing that I would do. I would, even when I was playing, I would hit the hard wood sometimes. And if my mind and my body weren't on the same page, I'd have to keep doing it until my mind and my body felt perfect. Even and I couldn't soften it up because if I did, it was cheating.
mm,
So I had to keep hitting it over and over. So you take that little example, and you take a little boy waking up in the morning, and soon as when I was asleep, of course I'm calm. There's no twitching. There's none of that going on. There's no holding your breath and tensing your body up. So just waking up in the morning, it's like I have to psych myself up. I have to like say it like, okay, this is a new day. All right, from now until I get out of the house, I'm not going to repeat myself unnecessarily. I'm going to get through this and I'm going to be smooth with it. But it never happened. It always failed. So waking up out the bed, trying to get out the bed, if it don't feel right, I'm constantly doing stuff like this because it don't feel right. Then I'm getting out. So you imagine doing that. Imagine putting on your shorts or your pants. It don't feel right coming over your leg. You got to take them back off.
right.
Your shirt, take it off, put it back on.
Oh wow.
And so you doing this every day.
Every day.
You know, whether you brushing your teeth, whether you combing your hair, you got to go over it again and again. It may take 40 minutes to an hour just to get outside.
So
So that
and they don't know that. I saw in the documentary they called it a habit, right? So the
the
doctors really
doctors, yeah.
didn't even know what it was. So you're in school now, and you're doing all of this. Did you have friends in school? Did people call you name? Like what was your school experience like?
Well, no, I definitely got picked on. I definitely got called names. I think what helped me was that I was considered an exceptional athlete.
Mm.
And a lot of those same guys had to meet me in PE class.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it kind of helped a little bit. But no, yeah. And they would usually do it almost always around a girl
Mm.
and possibly that they liked.
Mm.
You
Try to make
know?
you look less.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, and that was nerve wracking at times. But you know, those are moments at the same time too. If you're fortunate,
Mm.
you're able to embrace, and they end up making you stronger.
Right.
Right? They definitely make you stronger. And I was fortunate to have that mindset. I was reading something before I came here, and it kind of coincides to some degree. And they say when somebody say you can't do something, do it twice and take photos.
Mm.
right? So it's like, okay, you know, you're approaching me this way and you're trying to make me feel less than and all of this. I'm going to show you.
So that's like a perfect. I'm going to take a momentary station break. Right? You said when someone says you can't do it,
Do it
do it
twice and
twice and
take
stay.
photos.
So I have a brand called Anti Can't, and I want to give you a T-shirt. See, I
Perfect
have
time.
right. So I want to give you this as a gift.
I appreciate
You
it.
know,
May God bless you.
I believe that wherever you go, you got to give an offering, right? And so, no, that's huge. That's huge. So when it came to athletics, you thrived. But I thought I heard on a documentary where you struggled a little bit academically,
A lot of it.
a lot of it. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, when I say a lot, educate, uh, it was never sold to me. You know, people say, oh, it's important to get an education.
Right.
But it really wasn't sold to me in a huge way.
Mm.
Because a lot of the people that I saw, and it didn't resonate. I know, okay, it didn't resonate at that age that entertainers and actors got an education. Because I'm looking at what they're doing.
Right.
But the people that talk about going to school, right, and get an education, no offense. I think when you're young, your aspirations are so huge, right? You know, they say reach for the stars, right?
Right.
Or beyond. If you don't get it, you know, you get the sky or whatever. So I was no different. I wanted the entertainers and the actors and the ones that they said had the wealth. Now it didn't resonate to me that somebody owned these buildings.
Right.
I didn't have that consciousness about the money that was associated with that. Because what's given to us is what we see on television often. If I didn't grow up in a family where my mother was she had an 8th grade education, right? And so, and I always say this, that she can't give you what she didn't have. And so we were left to seeing these images, and images are powerful. So I wanted, like, man, I want to be rich and wealthy like them. So when people say, well, get an education, and I'm looking, well, shoot, you got a 9 to 5. I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want that type of education. Even a doctor that was in our neighborhood that I ended up talking about at some point, he stayed in our neighborhood.
So you saw how he lived.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want that for myself. So it didn't resonate at the time. So not because I couldn't do it, I just didn't have an interest.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't something that appealed to me culturally, that spoke to me as a young African-American man, most of the stuff that we came across, which I came to find out much later. But yeah, I remember being in the 4th grade, and that's when I was introduced to basketball. And at the time they had U's. They didn't have F's, U's for unsatisfactory. And that was my first time. I got that report card, man. I said, my mother's going to kill me. I had all U's. I mean, everywhere.
You knew that wasn't good.
Oh, my. And that was, again, when I was introduced to basketball. And throughout the course of my going to school, I just memorized my way through. I never really learned anything. And it affected me. And still, at 55 years old, you can never get back the time that was lost.
Right.
Never. You can only start from where you are and just continue to try to make progress. But I remember going to LSU, and they put me in this class to try to assess where I was going to be educationally. I could read my butt off. I could spell.
Right.
But my comprehension skills were terrible. Critical thinking skills, didn't really have them. And I remember the guy or the person asked me, what does this word mean? I can read words I didn't even know what they meant, spell some of them, but I said, I don't know. He kept asking, what does this mean? I said, I don't know. What does this mean? And the more he asked, man, the more humiliated I felt. And he ended up saying, okay, well, what do you get out of the story? I said, I don't know. And so while I'm breaking records at LSU, while I'm on the cover of magazines, the world didn't know that they put me in the corner on campus in this small room in the basement with about 4 or 5 other students in this remedial reading class. I had to learn how to read to the point of defining words, plucking the moral out of the story, thinking critically, and because it was just something that I was never taught.
Yeah.
You know, and then Dale Brown put me on a summer job with this author named Gus Weil. He had a play on Broadway. And I would go to work every day, if you want to call it work. And every day the routine was I would meet him in his office 10 minutes. And in just 10 minutes, we would just talk. And I used to, a lot when I talk.
Right.
And he would correct those little things. We would have conversation. He would tell me stories. Then I would go into my office and I would play on the word processor. And I would be on the phone and I'd leave. But every day I would go into his office. But I noticed a difference. I came back that next year in front of the media. I was better poised. I was more confident. I spoke better.
Yeah.
And so those little steps along the way. But yeah, I was terrible in school, more so because it just wasn't something that I think everybody wants to be informed. But I think there's so many different ways to educate, right? And I've learned over the years that I'm not a guy that if you put me behind four walls, I can get it, but it's harder. So even today, I study better and I write better when I'm on planes. I'll go in a parking lot where there's cars and things passing by, and I hone in and I read better, I write better. I go to cafes and I sit by a window where there's traffic. That works for me. And I think a lot of it correlates with, I grew up my life playing basketball. So there's a defender in front of me. I see him, but I don't. But you also have to be cognizant of the movement around you.
Right.
And then there's fans, right? But you're able to hone in full speed and do this. So that correlates with how I study and how I do. But I didn't have that then.
So I'm thinking about, as a principal, I have a lot of Mahmouds, right, in my school, right? A lot of kids who may be going along and saying, hey, you know, I can read, I can write, I can spell, but when it comes to the comprehension, when it comes to all of that kind of stuff, I'm having difficulty. What would you say to that young man or that young lady right now?
Say that again.
So I have a lot of, students who are probably in the same situation that you were in when you were in school.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would you tell them now, based on like what you know now, and you're a well-read person and all of that kind of stuff? What would you tell them?
I think education is, this is my humble opinion. I think school now, they almost teach you to conform to one way. You sit in a desk and you consume.
Right.
And there's almost this discouragement from asking critical questions, right? Because if you ask really hard questions, then you considered a troublemaker, and it discourages you away from wanting to ask questions. But also, I think what helped me was, I think it's good to introduce, like I ask people this, I said, what are you interested in?
Right.
Because a lot of us are reading things and doing things because we have to, not because we're interested. I remember reading something about Plato or Socrates, and they were talking about the best time to learn is when people want to learn. But they also said the best time to learn is when people are interested in learning. So my thing is, if there's something you're interested in, let me go find some material and give you that. Because now there's an interest. I want to know this stuff.
Right.
And I found that the more you read, like Dale Brown gave me the autobiography of Malcolm. I didn't even know Malcolm. But as I began to read, I'm like, wow, the way he thinks is fascinating.
Right.
But always in books that interest you, if you're interested, they're going to mention concepts or authors that you don't know about. And if you like him, you're going to say, I want to go see what this author is saying.
Right.
Then I want to go see what this author is saying. Before you know it, that's how your library increases.
Right.
And then they're going to mention things that you just never heard of. I remember in Japan, I was reading a book, and the guy mentioned something about remote viewing, astral projection. I said, what is that? And I said, darn, they teach this stuff at MIT and Harvard, and yeah, I never heard of the term,
Right.
Out-of-body experience and all of this stuff. But this is what I would tell them. Find what works for you. Like sometimes you have to just step away from life, so to speak, all of the hustle and bustle. And I did that as a child too. I would sit, and even if you look at the history of philosophers and prophets and everything, there's always this correlation with they isolated themselves and they just reflected. Right. They took in what was around them and just sat in silence.
That's right.
Right? It teaches you a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. So sometimes you got to pull away and do a lot of soul searching and just sit in silence and really ask yourself, because there's so much coming to you all the time. And you think that this is what you want to do and this is who you are. There's a book called Invisible Influences, right? And we think that a lot of things we say and do is because we thought about it. But they took these two individuals and they were trying to convince them to put a commercial together. And they were driving. They didn't know that the whole drive was being videoed. And on the way, when they got there, they came up with their ideas. And then one of them had dragon and balloons in their commercial, and one of them had palm trees and stuff like that. They said, well, what made you think of that? They said, I just thought about it. Little did they know, as they were driving, they passed palm trees and they passed this big advertisement with dragon and balloons.
Yeah.
But if you and I are talking like this and we're driving, I'm looking at you, I see it in my peripheral vision for a millisecond. I didn't stare at it.
It's implanted in your
Just that little small millisecond or second of looking at that was enough to influence that decision, what they thought that they thought of. Imagine the stuff that we read and consume every day.
Yeah.
And we think, hey, no. Somebody else is dictating how you view beauty, how you view success, how you view intelligence. And so sometimes you got to sit back and say, hold on, man, how do I
That's right.
see the world? And what do I want to become? And how do I want to be? You know, and that's something that George Washington Carver says, and I think about a lot. He says, no one has the right to come into this world and go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it.
Right.
And so the importance of leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
Right, really leaving a legacy, but how, but leaving a legacy that, because I don't know how many times I go and speak, universities and students who have gone 4 and 5 years of college, got their degrees, and then they come up and they say, you know what, man, this is not even what I want to do. They thought they did.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the conversation I have, and this is what how I come at a lot of people. I really, okay, what interests you? What motivates you? And then target that. Start from there.
So at the time when you went to LSU, actually I want to back up a little bit. Before you went to LSU, you were highly sought after, as a high school athlete. And I did some research and found out that they were actually keeping your mail from you because they wanted you to go to school in Mississippi. Yeah. So talk about, like, I think I heard you say it was the first time that you confronted a white man who was an authority figure. So take us through that story.
Yeah, there was a lady named Miss January, a 4th grade teacher, African-American sister, man, I was very close to. And then there was a Dr. Dunn, who was an African-American doctor who came in the picture later. And I had missed an invitation to a prestigious camp prior. I didn't even know it.
Oh, wow.
Someone reached out to Dr. Dunn. And then he conveyed it to Miss January, which is how I almost missed the Nike camp.
Oh, wow.
They caught me just in time. And they said, hey, man, we've been trying to get in touch with this guy, and da-da-da-da-da. And that's when I went and confronted. And I said, well, look, I was told that I was invited. And then, so there's a history of it at Gulfport High. There's a guy he was the assistant to the head coach, Burt Jenkins, Gerald Austin. He worked at the school. He kept the letters.
Wow.
Right? And so when I found out, I was sort of passive at that time. Because you grew up, your environment has a way of molding and shaping you. Absolutely. Right? If you see your parents and people bowing their head and talking softly, right, and you got to play the game, you end up doing the same thing. Right. Even though you know in your soul something ain't right about that. I don't like the way this feels.
Right.
But now, man, I'm living in, this is, for me, this is life or death to make it in the NBA.
Yeah. This
is like you messing with my mama. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now I don't care who you are. So that's what gave me the courage. And I went and met him in his office, and I said, I can remember like it was yesterday. I said, I was invited to this camp. and you guys have been hiding my letters. And he said, well, and he told me this. He said, at the time I was Chris, he said, you can get more notoriety in the state of Mississippi than you can go in that. I said, are you kidding me? I said, there's 101 of the top players in the nation invited to this camp. Coaches from all over the nation gonna be there. There's nowhere in the world I'm gonna get more notoriety in the state of Mississippi than going to this Nike camp. And I said, I'm not coming here to ask for your permission. I'm coming here to tell you that's what I'm gonna do. Mm-hmm. And I was furious, and I'm looking at him, and I'm just looking at it at this time. I'm just staring at it. And he kind of put his hands up. And after that, he was trying to make it right, but it took me probably about 2 weeks. Like, he would crack jokes, and I would look at him and tell him, oh, man, I'm not even laughing, move. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm not, it ain't funny. Right. You know, because, see, I'm not just thinking about me. I'm thinking about all the other people that you probably destroyed their careers. Yeah. Right? And so it took me some time to kind of warm up, and I've just been that way. I mean, it ain't just about me. There's other people. Yeah. And so I ended up going, and it was a beautiful experience.
So to that, right? So you said, I'm going. Right. But you already told us you didn't have much money. So what was in your mind, like, that you were like, look, I'm going?
That's another thing. When I decided to go, Mississippi had a rule. If it wasn't for Dr. Dunn, I wouldn't have been going. I wouldn't have went. Mississippi had a rule, even though Nike was inviting me. They was paying for my flight, my room and board, food, everything. Mississippi said, no, you have to pay for it. And if you don't, you're ineligible. You're high school. They had a rule. So the state of Mississippi is complicit in what? Of course. Hurting destroying the future of these, because most of us don't have that money.
And who was going? It was both of us.
Exactly. So Dr. Dunn put it in my mother's account, the money, so she can pay for it. When I went to the camp, they also told me, even though you paid for it, you can't bring back paraphernalia.
They were going, somebody was going to see if you had some stuff on.
I would, just based on that alone, I would have been stupid to go to a Mississippi school. But I got, through talking to the old heads and the wisdom, they said, hey, you're in the state of Mississippi. Yeah. You have to give the impression. You have to keep one of them on your list. Right. Even though you know you're not going. So when they say, where you thinking about going? Oh, LSU, Mississippi State. But Mississippi State was never on my list. Right. But I had to do that because I was still in school and they could do anything. Right. Right. To try to hurt me. It would have been harder because of who I was. If you try not to play me, been more obvious, but you can't put anything past.
So fast forward, now you're at Mississippi State. And it's funny because Chris and I were talking about like how
at LSU.
I'm sorry, LSU. Yeah. I'm sorry. We're talking about how somebody could come in your freshman year, you averaged like 30.2 points a game. Yeah. And so some of that was, scoring 50 points. And I said to Chris, now I could shoot.
I don't doubt it.
I'm just saying, I just want to let you know.
I don't take anybody for granted until I get them on the court.
Right. But I have never in my life scored 50 points a game, right? And of course, Chris, I've done that plenty of time, right? But I said, you got to be a special kind of somebody mentally, right? To say, I'm going to put up 50 points. There has to be either a certain amount of confidence, a certain amount of selfishness, a certain amount of like bravado to say, I'm going to score 50 points. What's in your mindset, averaging 30 and scoring 50?
Actually, it was never in my mind to score 50. I didn't come up that way. Now it was in my mind to dominate and just play the game. And so, and a lot of that, when I say your environment has a way of molding you, shaping you, a lot of that is developed in those younger years. Waking up, thunder and lightning, playing in the heat, coming home, frostbitten hands, because you're playing against invisible people. You're playing a lot of one-on-ones. It builds a sort of mental toughness. Like I'm not I'm not about to put myself through this type of abuse day in and day out and get on that court and take a back seat.
Right.
It's going to be you or me. It's life or death.
Yeah.
Right. And when there's opportunities to take over, you're going to trust that you could be that dude to take over.
Yeah.
And so, but it never was in my mind to, I want to go out and score 50. If you look at my whole career, like you hear people say 70 and 80 points, but they blew the team out. That's another thing. When I was coming up, first of all, there wasn't until like, I think 10th or 11th grade, they got the 3-pointer in.
Okay.
But my coach in junior high, because junior high went up to 9th grade. And so high school started 10 to 12. So when I was in the 7th grade, I was playing for the 10th grade AAU, averaging 21. But our coach only played us 2 quarters.
Oh, wow.
Right. You got to get
21 in 2 quarters.
You got to get it in 2 quarters. Because But now when I got to high school, it was different. Right. But even in junior high, 2 quarters.
So you had to make it count.
No wasted movement, no wasted time. You got to go. Right. And so, but if you look at my whole career, the times that I had 55 and 51 and 50, every game we needed it. It wasn't a blowout. It was like, we got to do something.
Yeah.
You know, and I pride myself on that because I'm not a selfish dude. I'm an aggressive dude. I want to dominate, but I'm not. You know, I'm not like, okay, I want to see if I can score 80.
Right.
Nah.
So thinking about that, is it easier to score? Because I think about college, everybody's going for it because you're trying to make it to that next level. In the NBA, you have millions. You still want to win, but to me, at least on the surface, it looks like the pressure is off just a little bit. Is it harder to score in the NBA, high school, or college?
I'm trying, look.
Don't hold back.
If you're asking me, I'm always taught to be humble but truthful. I haven't had a problem since elementary school scoring the ball.
Wait. You notice how he lowered the mic a little bit? Very humble. Yeah, bring that mic back up there.
I mean, I'm just honest because I've been blessed. I worked hard. Even though I've been blessed with fast twitch muscles and athleticism, I've worked just as hard, if not harder, as though I didn't have those abilities. You know, so, I mean, prime example, I was at the Nike camp going into the 11th.
Right.
Michael Jordan was there. And this was my first time seeing him in living color. And I'm on the bottom of the bleacher, and he's talking to all of us, and he's so close I can reach out and touch him. And I'm looking at his body, man. I mean, I ain't never seen a body. I mean, he was chiseled, and he's black, and he had lotion on. And so you can really see the fibers right in his legs. Yeah. I'm looking at him, man. I'm just, wow, is this how you gotta look? And out of all the people there, he looks at me, calls me on the basketball floor. And I'm at the top of the key. Now, I've been playing against invisible people in my head, 2, 3 invisible people. They're always this close to the basketball. I'm trying to escape my imagination and get my shot off. I'm imagining getting hit. I'm out there by myself. So I'm doing this every day. No exception. I mean, hard. Not just going through, every day was almost like a near-death experience. I get choked up when I talk about it because there were moments I thought I was literally going to die. I was working. You know how you work so hard, you don't think your breath is going to come, and tears are coming down your eyes. This is how hard I work. So Jordan is in front of me. I'm not scared, but I think a healthy dose of nervousness is good. So he gives me the ball. He said, young fella, I want you to come at me with everything you have, and I'm going to try to stop you. I said, okay. Whole camp is watching. So I get it, and I jab, and I take off. He bites, I take off, and I'm from the top of the key to the back, the goal, I could have probably beat Usain Bolt. But I didn't go straight up. I didn't leap upward because he's 6'6", and he was coming for it. I mean, his recovery time was quick. So instead, I kept running through, and I just took something off. I took something off of the layup because if I'd have went up, I would have held it in my hand too long. So I kept on, and it went in. The crowd went crazy. And I say this all the time because it's true. My insides were acting like they were outwardly, but you wouldn't have known, because when you do something like that, even though it shocked you, but when people are watching, you don't want them to know you're surprised, so you walk up like you do this all the time.
Yeah.
But not too cocky because it's Michael Jordan.
Right.
You just walk off like,
Yeah.
And
And
then,
what was his
but he actually he's a competitor. He gave me the ball again. So if you know anything about basketball, if I just hit you with a bump and went this way,
Yeah.
now he bounces it. I catch. I don't establish a pivot, but still, it looks like what? I'm getting ready to do this. But this time I just threw it through my legs real quick, crossed him over, and I took off this way.
Yep.
Laid him up.
Again.
Yep. When it came out, he asked me, when it came out the hoop, he asked me for the ball. He said, go sit down. And I remember sitting down. God, man, look, I'm not exaggerating. And I sat down the whole time. I'm having a conversation with myself internally. I'm like, man, I just scored on Michael Jordan twice. And it was easy.
Right.
I said, man, wait till I tell my boys, they ain't gonna believe this.
Yeah.
But what that did was it caused me to work out harder and harder, because I wanted that feeling. I was addicted to it.
Yeah.
I wanted it. So I said all that to say, from elementary to NBA, scoring for me has never really been a problem.
It's all the same.
But yes, college, they're hungrier to a degree because they're trying to get there.
Right.
But the talent is not on the level of NBA.
Got it.
Because even though in college, you got bad NBA players, some that,
Right.
let's just face it, shouldn't be there.
Right.
Relationships is everywhere.
Mm.
I've seen it time and time again.
You know I'm going.
But in college, you have more of those players, because everybody in college was kind of like their dude in high school.
Right.
Everybody in the NBA kind of like their dude in college.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So
yeah.
I don't want to cut you.
No, you
but
good.
We had a
Cut me off
conversation
anytime you want.
earlier because you just said something that, you said some guys make it to the NBA who probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And so I think you probably know what I'm going to ask you, and that is, how do you feel about the whole Bronny situation, making it to the league?
I don't mince my words, like it or not. I think it's, people will say, well, the word nepotism is being spread. That's exactly what it is. But some people will argue, they say, well, they do it, other people do it. What's unjust is unjust.
That's right.
Right? He averaged 4 points. On top of that, he had a heart condition. And I look at it this way. You have people that have put work in that have better numbers than him. Even if he does well, it's unjust, because you would never know what that person that averaged 10 or 12 points could have done. And on top of that, you're a billionaire, man.
Right.
A billionaire doesn't need that. Two, you are taking away the opportunity of somebody else who deserves it. I hate it.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And my children, if they were here, I'm consistent. Well, what if it was my children? Matter of fact, my next to the oldest just told somebody, he was on the phone. He said, man, my dad told me if he had an AAU team, don't expect to make it if you can't earn it.
That's it.
That's just the way it is. Because what am I teaching you?
That's right.
You know what I mean? You got to earn it. Now, look, I'll train you, I'll do this, but because if I let you come on this team, somebody's better than you, I'm being unjust to them. I got to live with that. I'm going to have to answer to God on the day of judgment for that.
Yeah.
That's more important to me. So I don't like it. I don't like it.
I agree with you 100%. I just wanted to, see what an NBA player thought about it. You know what I mean? To justify my beliefs. So you make it, doing very, very well at LSU. The story goes, you come home one day, you go to wash your hands, and the sink falls out, and you're like, wait, my family is struggling while I'm eating 3, meals a day and things of that nature, and you decide to go to the NBA. What did your family feel was going to happen? Like, what did you think was going to happen at that moment?
At what moment?
Where you declare, all right, I'm going to the league. Like, did you get a whole bunch of extra friends? Like, what happened with that?
I kind of, all my life, I've pretty much I'm a people's person, and I watch people a lot. You can learn a lot from just studying people, but also I don't like have entourages, and you know what I mean. So I pretty much, CJ, I've been knowing for what 17 years. So, and not that other people can't come into my life because I love people, but I didn't even at that time I didn't move that way. I kept my circles small. That's just because I have a really relatively simple life. I train, I go eat, I spend time with family or whatever. I'm back training. Because if you're really serious about your craft, it's going to consume so much of your time. You don't have time for all this other stuff, right? So I didn't really get a lot of extra friends. I tell you, I was concerned, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I speak about this a lot. How your environment has a way of molding and shaping you. Right. I grew up, even though I was breaking records, it was in the back of my mind that something was gonna happen. This is too good to be true, right? And this is why I'm so adamant about education and learning your history and your culture. Because when you don't know that, you're always susceptible to someone else's interpretation of who you are, and they don't always have your best interest. And so you can grow up your life thinking inferior and less than. And so even though I was breaking records, I literally was like, man, I just scored 53, my 5th game at LSU, national televised game. I don't know if it was on the thing, but afterwards, man, I'm on the bus crying. I mean, snot coming out I'm scared. I'm like, man, the plane gonna crash. Something's gonna happen. This. So when I knew I wanted to go, I was training, but I'm always looking around like this ain't gonna happen. And your dream is, man, I want to be able to take care of my family. Right. I mean, I want to get out the ghetto. I want to do this. And so for me, that was on my mind daily. Trying to escape it, but it's hard. But I can remember those days, like at LSU. I was so close to going to Coach Brown and say, we just got off that trip from Florida. The plane was like doing this and this and lightning. I'm like, oh, I knew it. Jeez. And when we landed, I was this close of going to ask Coach Brown, hey, Coach, I want to play, man. I really love the game, but I'm wondering if I can just play home games. I don't want to fly no more. Wow. But then you know how you talk like, man, hey, man, you tougher than that. Right. You got to psych yourself up. Come on now, you come too far. And then you start playing again, right? But it was on your mind. But as I got older, I'm like, why did I think that? Why did I have these thoughts? I started analyzing what I was consuming. How many of you heard of Sanford and Son and Good Time? I grew up on that. Every show. And this is along with other stuff we hear that influence us. Every show, they're growing up some of the same socioeconomic conditions that we grew up in. Right. Every show you're rooting for them to get out the ghetto. Like when it seemed like they're about to get out, something happens to kick them right back in. They never make it. But what happens if you pay attention, you get hyped because if they make it, you make it. Right? But then when they don't make it, it's a emotional letdown. Yeah. And this is year in and year out. And as I got older, I'm like, God, oh, this is what it was. That's it. This is why I couldn't think highly of myself. This is why I couldn't really embrace success. Because of all the stories y'all been telling me about who I'm not or who I am, right? That doesn't coincide with, inherently me. Yeah. Right? And that's at that moment, and I know we flipping a little bit, at that moment is when I began to take reading and analyzing things more serious. And say, man, you know what? I'm going out swinging. I'm not going out like that. Because that's because you just living to survive and you're not living your life.
So as a principal of a school, and I told you I was going to ask you this question because that right there was powerful. I'm thinking about why is it that our children don't necessarily see themselves as we see them, right? It's like that 7'2" guy who can't play ball. I'm like, why? What's going on? I don't understand why you're not dunking every time. I don't get it, right? but they don't see themselves as that, right? And a lot of it is what we consume. So as the principal of a school, what would you advise me to put in my library to make sure that our kids know who they are? And I want you all to take out whatever you have to write on, because I'm not going to write up here, but I need this list of books and things like that that you picked up that have sort of shaped you along your journey.
I got a laundry list, but I ain't gonna give them all.
All right.
But because I'm a Muslim, I'm gonna say Quran always.
All right.
I'm gonna say Life of the Prophet. I'm gonna get that out. But I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say the autobiography of Malcolm.
Mm.
I'm gonna say anything with Kawanza Kunjufu.
Mm. Yep.
Right?
I know.
I'm gonna say Randall Robinson. He has a book called The Debt: What America Owes the Blacks. He got a book called Reckoning: What Blacks Owe to Themselves. He's got a book called Black Life in America. And he's got a book called Quitting America. Phenomenal writer. I'm gonna Amos N. Wilson. There's a book by Howard Zinn called From 1492 to the Present. Yeah. What's the first? Yeah, but he talks about history from the vantage point of, because oftentimes history is written by those who conquer.
Right.
He's talking about it from the vantage point of those who were conquered. Like, what did the natives think?
Right.
What did those who were enslaved, how did they, look at it? I think that should be in every school. Or you giving me some, who did I say so far? Kawanza Kunjufu, Amos N. Wilson. Man, I would pull up some stuff by Asada Shakur.
Okay.
There's a book called, and this is dealing more so with the system. There's a book called American Exceptionalism and American Innocence. Phenomenal book. It talks about a lot in terms of even this country and how since its inception, 90-some% of its existence has been at war. And it drops on a lot of details just about how things go. Oh my goodness. I mentioned some, there's also some other books that's not necessarily about history and politics and religion, but Chop Wood, Carry Water, Falling in Love with, it's by Joshua Metcalf. Chop Wood, Carry Water, and it's falling in love with the process of becoming great. Because we live in a fast culture, fast food, we want things fast. And everything takes time. And it talks about it. It gives a lot of examples. A lot. You read it.
Yes.
Phenomenal book. And it's a very small book, easy read. Who did I mention? There's we mentioned something out there, and I should have wrote it down.
You're talking about medical apartheid. You read that?
Oh, medical apartheid for sure. There's a book called Prophet of Healing. There's a book called The McDougall Plan. It talks about the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry. Right? How they're in cahoots, what you eat. I mean, it's.
You're talking about the Food and Drug Administration.
Food and drugs, yeah. I mean, it's just as we talk before I finish, some more books are gonna come to mind. But it's just, look, it's a lot of them. But in terms of authors, I would also go get the Noam Chomsky's, the Arundhati Roys. I would pull up a lot of stuff, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer.
So by the time
That's a lot of stuff.
By the time you come to Bloomfield High School, we're gonna have a section.
Okay.
And we're gonna have these authors at Bloomfield High. I said until they kick me out, I'm in charge.
Let's do it.
So that's what we're gonna do.
All right.
So fast forward to currently, you're working with some NBA athletes in terms of like just player development and things of that nature. Who are you working with now, and what are you working on?
Well, right now, I mean, 90% of what I do, I travel and do public speaking. But in the summer is when oftentimes, I think somebody just called, they want to work with us. What's his name? Out of Atlanta? Chuma Okiki, I may be working with soon. I still work on and off with Dennis Smith Jr. Who did I just? I just left Salt Lake City, Taylor Hendricks, about a 6'8".
Okay.
Yeah, working with him. But I've worked with the Oladipos, the the Spencer Dinwiddies, those guys as well.
So you're working with those guys who made it to the NBA, and then you also take time and you're coming and working with, some of our young campers, right? What keeps you even to the point where it's like, I'm not just gonna work with the guys who are paying me the big dollars to do whatever, but I'm also gonna work with, young people who are up and coming.
You know, it's there's a saying by the prophet. He says, they asked him once, they said, who's the best individual? He said, the one you benefit from the most. And there's a saying too, there's a couple of sayings that I live with daily. They said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And then there's another one, that the goal in life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. You can't take it. So with me, it's always a two-way street. Like I come and I only know one way. I just want to pour myself into it, because there's a science to living. It may start off by, well, I'm doing this because I want to be compensated.
Right.
We're human, you know. If we're religious, God tells us, if you do this, you get this.
Right.
If you don't do this, because it's in us.
Right.
Right. But at some point you get to that point, it ain't even necessarily, you got to make a living, you got to do this. But I do, it's literally about being of service, because the peace you get of pouring in, but also they keep me energized.
Right.
And then I work with the philosophy that you can always learn something.
Right.
And so they don't know that I'm watching them as they're watching me, and I'm trying to teach them something as I'm walking. Like I said, not only am I a people's person, but I watch people.
Yeah.
Because they will teach you a lot.
Yeah.
Of what to do and what not to do.
Right.
And how to tweak and all of that. So a lot of times I'll come in, sometimes we played this game so much, CJ and I will go work out. Like I say, man, I don't have nothing written down. I'll start on the court warming up, and as you warming up, I'm already looking at you. I already diced you into what I feel I need. And then I start, because every move there's a counter, every counter there's a counter, and you can just start building. And I just go, but they keep me energized.
Yeah.
And I was reading something also today. I was listening to a guy, and he say style is the death of creativity. When you develop a style, you stop being creative. And I remember saying something when I was young, and then I heard Bruce Lee say it differently. Boy. I say, man, make unpredictability your pattern.
Yeah.
Right? The more predictable you are, right? The more creative you are, the more versatile you are, the more valuable you are.
Right.
So when I watch them, because they do a lot of stuff today we call traveling.
Right.
And it is travel.
Oh, yeah.
But the rules have changed. So, but because this is the way things are, when I'm training guys, I'll be like, look, this is the correct way.
Right.
This is the way that has been imposed upon you now.
Right.
We're going to learn all of it. But just in case you got a referee that calls the traveling, you know how to do the right way, and you still are explosive. You don't lose anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, they help me.
Yeah.
You know, so with that also, it's a two-way street. So that's a part of what all of those things, and then some, is a part of what's keeping me going. Yeah. And on top of what I said about George Washington Carver, about leaving a legacy.
Absolutely.
So if people can remember you, like, man, he really poured into me, right? He not only in terms of basketball, his energy, his conversation, and because children, just like people can fake it.
Right.
But if you're around people day in and day out, if it's not sincere, I tell people sincerity breeds consistency. Meaning you can be sincerely bad or sincerely good. But if whoever you are, you can't fake it for too long.
That's right.
It's going to come out. So I want you to see the genuineness. I want you to see I'm pouring into you. I'm going home aching too.
Right.
I'm going, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because that's just the only way I know. And I don't know how to train. Also, if I'm training, there are levels. So when I say that there's context to it, if I'm training an elementary student or professional MBA, I only know one way to train, is that to teach you how to be a professional. But your skill level may not allow me to teach you certain things.
Right.
But I only know one way, is to teach you how to be a professional. I'm not cutting you short.
That's it.
just because they're in the NBA and you're in elementary school. That's just the way. That's just the way I am.
Now, you played some time in the Big Three. Can you explain how did you get to the Big Three, and what was the experience like in the Big Three?
This guy right here, CJ, he don't mind approach almost anybody and talk to him. But we had known each other from years ago, and he saw me in LA Fitness, and he came up to me and telling me about a league. And I was hesitant because you hear about a lot of these leagues starting up and they're flopping. And then he kept on talking.
Mm.
And I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And I went and tried out. I thought I did well. He's going to say I'm cutting the story short, but I thought I did well. They were about to pick the last pick. I was in shape. I don't think I missed a shot in the combine.
Mm.
Right? And but there's politics and everything.
Right.
And when they say there's no politics, usually there's more.
Right.
But they were on the last pick. And Kendall and I were looking with each other. Early on, when we saw some of the picks, like, oh, here they go. And they were on the last pick. And I'm just sitting there, man. I'm like, well, I came all the way down here.
Mm.
And then I heard my name. I got up. Then afterwards, CJ was right there. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been in the Big Three because he said they were about to pick another guy. What was his name? Eddie Robinson. He said, hey, man, that's a bad pick. And they didn't even know CJ like that. He said, what do you mean? Hey, you only got one guard. What if he goes down?
Right.
He said, who would you pick? Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. They were about to call the guy, the three-headed monster's pick, and they stopped it.
Oh, wow.
And then they picked me. And then, of course, the first year. Now, if you want to get into this, I'll get into it.
Come on now, get into it now.
The first year, I didn't really. Jason Williams got and he can correct me if I'm wrong. Jason Williams, and I normally don't like to do this, but it's like, this is ridiculous. Jason Williams, he ruptured his Achilles.
Mm.
So Gary wasn't putting me in. And so even after Jason erupted his Achilles, he had some other guys that wasn't really point guards. He wanted to play. They weren't playing well. We were losing. Next game happened. Not playing well, losing. He was forced to put me in.
Mm.
By the grace and mercy of God, I got in. And that game, what? How many? 25 points. Now,
How old are you at this point?
50, 49, 48.
48.
I played until I was 53. I played 5 years.
Killing them.
But what happened was, after doing that, even if you don't want to play me, you're kind of forced because it don't look good.
Yeah.
The man just scored. But throughout the whole Big Three, and he could attest to it, he was looking for opportunities. Like if there was a lull in the game, let's sit him. Right?
What was that?
What I thought it was jealousy.
Mm.
And at first, I'm not quick to run to stuff. I'll sit. We're taught to make excuses for people.
Right.
Until you can't make excuses no more.
Right.
Right? So I'm like, you know. But your heart is telling you, but you know,
Right.
I'm not talking about it. But then other people start talking about it.
Right.
And then he started talking to other people about, this is Gary Payton, telling other people, man, we're going to get rid of him. And I think he said, Chauncey was like, man, you must be crazy. We'll bring him as a captain on our team. Man, the man just destroyed the league. And then said, man, what are you on, man? So people start saying there must be jealousy there.
Yeah.
And what happens is, I'm like, man, why though? Why?
Right.
Dude, you're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You're sitting on millions.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always mean things.
Right.
People, they're suffering sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of insecurities going on. And I know a lot of people, and I get it, but still, come on. We came in at the same time.
Right.
One of us still playing.
Right.
And one of us can't play.
Right.
Right? But what does that have to do with me?
Right.
You know, but that's what I think it was.
Gee.
Because for the longest he was, oh man, we knew we were gonna get him. He didn't know what I knew. And you never had intentions to get me. CJ was the one that made that deal happen. But since things were going well, he wanted to take the credit.
Of course, of course.
And so I don't like when people continuously do that. I try to give you a pass on, but if you keep it up now,
I know.
Let's make this.
Yeah.
Let's keep this. Yeah, no, that's not what it was.
So before
give him credit.
Of course, and we talked about this before, and everybody, from what I understand, CJ actually has family that lives in the Hartford area. His family is right here, as a matter of fact. Big, huge basketball
and his
family.
wife, Deanna, next to him.
Right. Before I turn it over to Chris, we for questions from the audience. You've had a full life so far, 55 years old. I believe you got another 55, 60 years, right? What are you doing with the rest of that time?
What I'm doing now, trying to be of service. I study a lot. I write a lot. I'm always trying to find ways to be of service. I travel different countries. I'm connected to different humanitarian organizations. You know, so we go on the field. I go to colleges. I go to camps. Just things I do around the city. I'm always trying to be connected to people in some way. You know what I mean?
Giving back.
I mean, I don't care if there's a saying that a smile can be charity. You never know what people are going through. You know, just going and being kind to people. So I'm just trying to, man, just I said something in the film, and I mean this, you know. If I had one wish, one thing I could have, I said, for those of us, and those of us who don't, if we believe in the life hereafter, I said, if I can, on that day of judgment, be in front of God, and God asks me, Mahmoud, what do you have for me? If I can say with confidence, I don't have anything for you, I use everything you gave me.
Yes, sir.
So that's my ultimate goal, trying to use everything that's been given to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. We have a couple of questions from the audience.
Testing. Hi, my name is Brother Larry Moody, born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. You know, I want to celebrate both of you men for being here this evening and partnering with the MPact program. A couple of questions. Why MPact? What do you see as it relates to the values of the organization, right? Their methodology and the model. Then the other is, both of you are involved in the youth development sector, and talk about that partnership between the coaches, trainers, right, teachers, and educators for our young student athletes today, and what parents can learn about those partnerships and what roles that they can play, right, and making sure that their sons and daughters, right, are receiving the best training possible, right, going forward.
You want to start with that?
You said a lot. I'm gonna try to remember. Well, to begin with, why MPact? Again, CJ, through his relationships with Chris and knowing people, is how I was introduced to coming here. So I didn't know about MPact prior to coming here. But when I immediately, and I don't mince my words and I'm not exaggerating, when I stepped onto the court, and then I met Chris, and then I met the staff, and just, you can tell when you meet people often. I mean, people can fake it, but it's hard when you meet people that I could tell from the door, not only through his character, right, but that he was meticulous about who he brought in to be associated with MPact. Because just how people communicate with the youth, how they also pour their energy into it. And also that sports is just a tool. It's never an end in itself. It's always bigger than the game of basketball. And so that's something for me, that's why, because even just on that level, if it ended there, just having the right type of people pouring in the right type of energy, teaching them basketball skills, but also having conversations with them about life and all of these other things. And these young people, they feel that they can come up to these coaches. Like none of them are off limits. And they ask questions. They feel confident in that environment. And y'all can speak up and tell me if I'm incorrect, the students themselves. So for me, the why, this is why for me, that is important. And it's almost like, well, not almost. Have you ever heard of the Ubuntu philosophy? It's an African philosophy where they said this anthropologist created a game among children. He put fruit in a basket, and he walked at a distance and put it underneath a tree. And he said if anyone could get to that tree first, could have it all for themselves, because he wanted to see there was going to be this inclination to selfishness, right, and greed. They looked at each other. They all grabbed hands, and they ran to the tree as one. And when they got there, they said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "Why?" They said, "Ubuntu." They said, "How can one be happy when the rest of us are sad?" And then he went on to explain, this is a psychology among African tribes that I am because we are. And so this is the philosophy, right? We all in this together, and we trying to boost each other to be better, even if it ain't basketball, right? Because they're carryovers to everything. One more story. Bruce Lee had a protege. Let's run 2 miles. Bruce Lee, I don't want to run, Bruce. They start running. The guy's huffing and puffing. In the huffing and puffing, Bruce said, let's run 3 more miles. He said, Bruce, I can't, I'm going to die. Bruce said, well, die then. Kept running. Mm-hmm. At the end, the guy finished though. He got mad, he finished. They said, why were you so hard on it? He said, because they're carryovers to everything. If you give up on yourself, you give up on your business, you give up on your family, you give up on your education, you give up on everything. Don't give up. Mm-hmm. Right? So all of this is entwined into what MPact is doing. Like we in this together.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, so much.
I agree.
The youth development space today.
Thank you for that. So, but the youth development space today, right? Parents oftentimes, and I have 4 sons, have to make a choice on who we're going to entrust our sons and daughters with, right? For that dedicated time where they have an inclination, they got to focus. They want to be good basketball players, good students, right, in school, and student athletes, right? And parents, we want the whole child. We want that whole healthy child. Is there any nuggets that parents should look for, right, in making those choices, right, or viewing that activity of coaching, training, right, and how our children are being pushed there?
I know one thing that I would say as a nugget is that it works best as a partnership. One thing that I've noticed as a high school principal is that a lot of times parents will say, "You're the coach, I trust you, go for it." And then they back away, but don't necessarily know while the coach is teaching basketball, they also may be teaching something else that might be contrary to what you want in your own home. So for example, and I'm not going to put him on the spot, but I had to tell a coach during the game, we don't curse here because that's not what I do, right? And as a principal of a school, all of this represents me. So I don't want to hear you cursing from where I stand, right? And so if you don't want that around your child, you got to be involved. My daughter played in a flag football in a program. And I noticed that when I got there, the coach was smelling like marijuana. Noticed some choice words, and we just don't do that in our home. So we had to have a conversation with the coach. If she's going to be a part of this team, I'm going to need you to change when you get around my child. And so same thing is true in the classroom. I've been in classrooms where like, this is what we teach in our home. And I think you got to be very, very intentional about where you send your child and what you do with your child, who your child is mentored by. Because as he said, a lot of times the kids will come up to the coach before they go to the principal. And I recognize the power that athletics have, right? All of you who know Bloomfield, we get it in. So, right. And so tell me if I'm lying. So no, so it's very, very important that we make sure that who is around our child and putting pouring into our children, that they are as well read, that they do know the truth, and all of that kind of stuff, if it's going to work well.
I think we have a question.
Well, no, that's John Paul Gatto, The Underground History of American Education.
Mm.
He gives, that's a great book also. But go ahead.
Oh, okay, Corinne, you can take one over there and I'll start with the side.
John Paul Gallup. I'm gonna get that.
Hi, my name is Daryl Fitzgerald. I'm involved in media. You have amazing, like, I'm honored to be among sixth grade men. And what do you say to a young person who, let's say, is struggling? When I look at the documentary and I hear you speak about the role of discipline. And so, I remember when I was in school, there were some things that maybe became challenging, and I may not have been as good as a specific discipline. What do you say to that child who's struggling in a specific academic discipline? And what do they do to get the help that they need to get through a particular course or a specific academic discipline?
There's a lot to be said. The first thing that came to my mind as you were asking that question is this. They do studies all the time. There's a verse where it says, be in the company of the righteous. So I'm gonna go from there. But they do studies all the time. And they said, if you're not smart, hang around smart people. If you're not in shape, hang around people in shape. Your associations matter. So if it's something that you really want to do, or if you think you want to do it, one of the best ways is to be in those associate with people in those environments. Why? Because they found that when you're in those environments, there's a reason those people got to where they are. They had that discipline that you're talking about. They were consistent with it. So there's a language that they're going to use every day. There's a pattern of living they're going to do every day. And if you're around it enough, it's going to rub off.
That's right.
So I would say find people in the field that you're trying to get good at and stay with them. Stay on their hips. Don't let them go, because it's gonna be a natural progression. And I believe it works every time. You're gonna improve.
Could I add just something to that? Do what they do, but then also don't do what they don't do. That's the other piece. If you're trying to improve in your weight, if you notice that they don't eat candy, then don't eat candy. It's just that simple. So if somebody, meticulous, they do well in the classroom, the whole nine, like you said, do what they do, but then also look at what they don't do. Pay attention to that and stay away from that stuff as well.
Yeah.
One question over here.
If you could go back to basketball, what would you change?
That's a good
You would ask that guy, doggone.
That's a good question.
Oh, in terms of basketball, I would have not listened to my head coach in this area when he told if I got upset and mad, I could play defense. But when he said, hey, if the guy beats Chris, at the time my name was Chris, he said, hey, if he beats you, just call help. And we're going to have some people to help. I fell in love with that. Help! I ain't take defense too serious, because my thing was, I'm going to make my offense be my defense. Because if I can put pressure on you offensively, when I finally, when you get the ball, you too busy thinking about, but he got to get it back. You can't really concentrate. But I would change that in my game. I would take playing both ends. I would approach the defensive end the way I approach the offensive end. Good question.
We have a question over here. My name is Elijah. I'm a camper at the camp that we went to this week. I have a question. What was your diet like when you were in high school?
Now that's tricky. You could only eat what your mama could afford. so look, I don't have that diet necessarily now. Look, there were days when I drank sugar water, syrup sandwiches. You know what I mean? I put coffee in the, she had those packs of coffee and I would heat the water up and pour the coffee and a whole bunch of white sugar. I would take the bread and put butter in the skillet, and sometimes she would have cinnamon, and then I'd make cinnamon toast, you know, stuff like that. I would just eat bread plain. She worked at a not animal,
VA.
VA.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes she would
Take stuff.
take stuff and bring food back. That's when we ate good. But most of the, I mean, a lot of times that, you know, the grits,
Mm-hmm.
eggs, bread, because that stuff stuck. Beans, rice, it stuck, right? And so that's what we ate most of the time when I was in high school. But because you're so young and your
Development.
metabolism is faster, and you playing so much, man, that stuff, you burn that stuff off. But that was my diet then. You know, that was my diet then. I wouldn't say, if you don't have to eat that way now, I would suggest you don't eat that way, right? But that's what it was then.
Mm-hmm.
One question over here.
I think that you have an amazing story, and it's been
thank
a
you.
pleasure to be around you all weekend.
Oh, thank you.
And also your testimony in regards to, I'm not sure how you would describe it, but maybe in today's society, they might say your Tourette syndrome might have been a disability. And to you, it seems like you become a superhero with that. But if someone does, or if you can describe a little bit, you talked about how you had to psych yourself up mentally to get out of bed and do things. How have you overcome that over time as an adult with the Tourette syndrome or condition that you have to adopt through life?
Help me remember the question. Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath,
Mm-hmm.
because it's in line with what you're talking about right now. What am I doing now?
Just your transition, you know, obviously what you do now, you can talk about it, but your transition from adolescence to adulthood, how have you maintained yourself to be able to deal with it?
Great question. Then the simple answer is, the more you do something, like waking up in the morning, even though it may take me 45 minutes to an hour to get outside, and it's nerve-wracking, and then it may take me 45 minutes to get to the court, because the same thing I'm doing, if I'm doing the move going to the right, I have to do the same thing to the left. If I mess up about 3 times and I'm headed in this direction, I have to back up in the opposite direction 10 steps and do it again, all right? And this is all the way up to the court. Then when I get to so that may take it 45 minutes, an hour. I get to the court, I got a drill, hour and a half, 2 hours. Invisible people, I'm going hard. After that hour and a half is over, I had a drill where I have to make 10 in a row, full speed. If there was any glitch in the move, and if my mind said all of them had to be all net, couldn't hit rim, that may take an hour. Because if I'm on my 9th shot, all of them didn't hit rim, but that 10th shot skims the rim and goes in, I gotta retake it and start at 0. And then on my way off the court, I'll be dribbling, and it's dirt, it's grass. And as I'm trying to get home, I may mess up 3 times. I have to back up 10 steps. I'm under the goal again. I have to do that same drill twice. So that was 3 workouts on the court, 1 45-minute workout to get there. It's like nerve-wracking. But you realize something after you finish it. You know how you hate to get up to go to work? You hate to do this. There's a love and hate. Like, I want to be great. I know I need to do this, but I don't feel like it right now. But you have to, you have high-hanging fruit and low-hanging fruit. You have to think about that vision constantly. You know, and you're like, man. And after you finally get through it, you are happy you did it. Man, I'm happy I did this. So now when you wake up, I call it a false feeling. Like, I want to, no, man, get it. You know, you constantly have it. There's a lot of self-talk you got to do. A lot of self-talk. And you know yourself. There's a saying by Waldo Emerson, wherever you go, there you are. You can fool people, you can lie, but you can't fool you. You know you a coward. You know you were lazy. You know you lying to yourself. So, well, I said, hold on, man. Get up. You know, sometimes, I mean, literally, you got to call yourself. I call myself name. You a chump. You gonna let, they say don't talk back because you crazy. Man, you gonna let, no, I ain't gonna let him. And then I get, boom, I get up and I get mad at myself. But also you got to have different motivators. Sometimes one motivator may not work that morning. Like I'm thinking about, man, I want to get my mom out the ghetto. That morning, that's not the strongest thought. It might be, man, I want to help people. Or I don't want to be a failure. Or you know what? There's an opponent in New York and Connecticut I may have to confront. I don't know what they're doing, but I want to be ready. That one probably is the strongest that day. You got to have different, and you pull from that one. You pull the ones that's the strongest, you got to pull from it. And the more you do it, it becomes easier to do. It becomes a part of you to where this is just what I do. I just wake up and go. Right?
It's huge.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Toronto. And when I was looking at the documentary, I was thinking about how like time changes, but a lot of things still stay the same. And so I wanted to know like what was your thoughts and experience when you seen Colin Kaepernick's situation with him being blackballed, and did that bring up anything for you, or do you have any thoughts about that?
You said it best. Time changed, but so much remains the same. And that's what I thought about. That nothing has really changed. Like they've done research that even and I love to bring up research. I'm gonna tell you why. As an athlete, we all are affected sometimes by stereotypes. Right? An athlete can say something. Oh, he says, what can he tell me? An academic can say the same thing because they got the label of an academic.
Right.
So this is why even when I go speak publicly, I'll speak, but then I'll pull from, well, you know, Asada Shakur said, Noam Chomsky said, because it adds weight, and some of us gonna listen if it makes sense. It's gonna resonate. But a lot of people, we think like that too, right? And so they've done studies that even now, even though it's 2024, it's more segregation now than it was back in the 50s and 60s, right? Dealing with racism, there's so much that has gotten worse. Cost of living. You wouldn't think it if you're looking at the modernity, right? We were talking about this book called, and it's a great book called Civilized to Death, The Price of Progress. In other words, we're taught that, we live in a civilized environment. But this brother, Christopher Ryans, is the author. And he talks about dentistry, he talks about politics, he talks about a lot. I'm gonna mention two examples and I answer your question. There's a tribe that was in Brazil that they were trying to convince to civilize their tribal ways because they thought they were primitive, so they brought them to London. When they got into London, the people in the man's house, day in and day out, so they asked him one day, they said, hey man, you leave the house and you're gone all day. Where are you going? He said, I'm going to work. He said, but what about your family? Spending time with them. He said, man, I got a mortgage. He said, what do you mean? He said, I got 30-year mortgage. I got to pay on this house. He said, where I'm from, we want a house built. We bring everybody together and we build it. That's civilized to me. But this society would call that what? Primitive. There were people that had bones and they were very skinny and they were knocking on the door of the wealthy's mansions. They said, what are they doing? They said, man, they're hungry. Those people got the money. He said, where I'm from. If you hoard money, you keep it from circulating within society where people, he said, we give you a soft warning. After that, we deal with you because you're not for the community. To me, that's civilized. But we've been taught that that's progress. So when I saw this, Kaepernick, and we're still talking about the same exact thing every year since the inception of this country. I was saying in the back, I said one of the most phenomenal feats that's ever been achieved on the face of the planet. It's not the creation of nuclear energy. It's not going to the moon. It's not any of that. It's a small group of people convincing the masses to accept their oppression even though they know they're being oppressed. That's the most phenomenal feat on the face of the planet. We'll sit here and we'll talk about all the problems. We know this has happened. Everybody, barbershops, airplanes, you name it, universities. But it still happens.
Right.
So when that happened, that's what it said to me. Nothing has changed in a substantial way for us at all. For us to still have these. If you took what's happening now with the George Floyds, all of the killings, the Sandra Bland, you name it, all of the stories. You take the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the black and white images. If you turn the volume off, you take those color images, you turn them into black and white, you wouldn't know what age we were in. You wouldn't know what time we were in. So nothing has changed. That's what I thought when I saw that.
We have a few more minutes before we have to transition. We're gonna take 2 more questions. Before we transition to, from here to Bergen's Cafe. All right, you got one up there? Okay, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Chris, I mean,
Mahmoud.
It happened.
Mahmoud.
It happened.
one question I wanted to ask you is, I've been dealing with it every day when I'm watching TV, I watch ESPN, and I watch and listen to them compare us against each other every day. And it bothers me because I feel like it travels down to our community, our children, everything, and it pits us against each other, and we hate each other. And I want to find out your take on that.
Well, I mean, if you're just using the word comparisons, there's good comparisons and there's not so good, not good comparisons. I think that's just the nature of us as human beings, right? There have been precedents that have been established before, and we're always looking for, oh man, you remind me of, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a way to do it. I mean, for example, since we're talking basketball, when people say, oh, he was Curry before Curry was Curry.
Right.
And he was a Kaepernick before Kaepernick, or you know. I'm honored, right? That people would, because he's doing phenomenal things on the basketball floor, right? So because there were people that influenced me. We're all influenced. Like none of us, there's nothing in life we do on our own. Right? People, I did this, so no. Like somebody had to create the ball, create the goal, the concept of the game. Right. You had to see something that influenced you to want to play it, right? So we all have people in our lives that have influenced us in ways like, man. And it's good to reach back and to honor those pioneers that came before it, and those are comparisons. But when we begin to in an unhealthy way make comparisons, right? Because there's some things you'll just never know, right? Like even when they say, well, the guys are, and I defend both. Like they say, hey man, guys are more talented. I won't necessarily say more talented. They're able to do different things. Right. Because when I was coming up, you had guys, big guys. It was this cookie cutter approach, and I disagreed with it then, but you could have, but times were different. Like, why are you limiting this big guy to just being under the goal? Mm-hmm. Why don't he learn how to dribble and shoot and do all of those things? On the playground, you would see him doing it. Right. But when they got into the gym, no, man, get under the goal.
Right.
You're putting handcuffs on her. It ain't that they couldn't do it.
Right.
They just weren't allowed to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, we didn't shoot a lot of threes. But if you looked at us, pick up, pop, plant, oh, dudes are pulling threes, doing all type of stuff.
Right.
Huh? You know what?
Hit like 3.
Oh no, that's okay. Everybody. But well, the way it's being done now, they pass up so many twos and just looking for the threes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
when we were playing with Rick Mahorn, when he was playing with us, it would be like this. If you shoot that shot again, I'm gonna break your neck.
But the times were different.
You know what I'm saying?
Because there was no 3-pointer, you gonna get a 1.
But
And it was a more difficult.
big man with big man, four guard with guard.
Right,
Now it's all over.
right.
Any position. So you don't really get the chance to see anybody that because everybody is scoring. Everybody's doing this. Everybody, the 7-footer come across the top of the key.
Yeah.
And just shoot 3.
And I think there are pros and cons to both. I love to see, I believe that when you, like anything in life, if you're trying to be a basketball player, whatever's involved in the game, try to perfect it. Just because you're a big man don't mean you can't handle the rock like a guard. If you're a big man that weigh 200 and you playing against Shaq, you ain't trying to post him. You want to bring Shaq out and be able to put it on the floor, right? So the more versatile you are, the more valuable you are. But I think it just depends on how healthy it is, right? And when you start saying errors,
Right.
like there's some things you'll never, look, I'm 50, and I'm not saying this, I'm coming from a humble place. I train NBA guys.
Right.
Sometimes they ask me to play. There's the Grant brothers,
Right.
Jerry and Grant and Jeremy Grant. 1'6'8", one. I was in Baltimore. When I come to train them, a lot of times I come with running shoes on. And then I got warm-ups. So I'm training. At the end, they want to play some knockout. Normally, I don't even play. I just train you and go. They say, man, we need to play. So, okay, no problem. Then they had a guy overseas. It was a good day. We all have our days. But I'm not even like, I'm not even going hard. But after so many years, little nuances, shot, hot, spot. You don't have to over dribble. You don't have to wasted movement. I'm winning. It played about 5 games. I'm winning. I win 3. They cursing at each other. Man, you can't stop it. And I'm like 50, but I'm looking. I'm like, man, y'all getting 10 million a year.
Right.
But so when people, what I'm saying is when people start, oh, back then, no. Some things not everybody's the same now.
That's right.
There are some people that can transition any age. Kevin Durant, Curry, they're so skillful. They can play in any age. Not everybody can play in every age, right? Like hand checking, it's a different.
Yeah.
But it's not their fault though. The NBA changes the rules. So if they change it, you can't hand check. You don't want to foul out.
Right.
That's the NBA. They did that to us. We started hand checking. Then scoring went down. Then they said, do this. And if you do this, it's a foul.
Yeah.
Now you hear. Well, whose fault is that? It's a combination. The players aren't ready, but also the people that's choosing the players. But you're going to get on the player, but you ain't going to talk about the management that chose them.
That's right.
And they didn't develop them. Right? But that's just how it works.
That's society.
Exactly.
That's society. So I want to say thank you so much for the
No, thank you.
conversation. Let's give Mr. Mahmoud. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you.
At this time, again, one more round of applause for Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.